It is Election Day in the United States, with voters going to the polls in the midterms, and their ballots will determine who controls the US Congress, made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, currently, both are in the hands of the Democrats, and losing either chamber would make the next 2 years tough for US President Joe Biden to pass legislation. Well, with me now to talk through all of the big topics is Dr. Julie Norman, co-director of the UCL Centre on US Politics. Great to have you with us once again, Julie. What would you say? I know it's a hard question, but what would you say is the number one issue for voters in this race?
Well, Helena, I think the number one issue is the economy and inflation. Just as it's affected Europe and the whole world, you Americans are feeling this price hit as well. Obviously, Democrats have been trying to push other issues, saying, very much that democracy is on the ballot. And I think that is also true. They're also trying to push issues like abortion. Republicans, meanwhile, are really focusing on the economy as well as, say, crime and immigration. But for most everyday Americans, where they're feeling it most is in these rising prices. And I think that is where some of these more swing voters, people in some of the key swing states, are going to be voting on that issue more than anything else.
It does appear to be a tight race. I mean, just how difficult would it be for Biden if he lost either chamber?
Yes, well, it's expected that the House will likely go Republican. Democrats have a very slim majority there and have always been predicted to lose seats there. The Senate is really neck and neck. It's 50-50 right now. Some of the key races are in a dead heat going into today. If Democrats lose one or both houses, which does seem likely, it really will stymie Biden's agenda for the next 2 years. We can expect a lot of gridlock at best, I would say, on Capitol Hill. And at worst, we'll probably see, a lot of targeting of Biden's policies and even some personal issues as well. We can expect that Republicans in the House will try and launch investigations into Biden's son, into Biden's handling of different kinds of issues, and really try and keep the focus on things that they see he has done wrong in his presidency in the build-up to 2024, whereas, of course, he'll be struggling to change that narrative at the same time.
OK, Julie, so the potential for all of that to be going on, while at the same time internationally, of course, a number of challenges, including the war in Ukraine, which continues. I just wonder what you think a Republican-controlled House would actually mean for support of the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, Helena, we've heard some voices on the right suggest that they don't want to be writing a blank check to Ukraine, maybe reining in some of the aid that's been going into the war. I do think that is still a minority within even the Republican Party. Many of the key leaders, Mitch McConnell in the Senate, for example, are very committed to the Ukraine war and are very much on board with Democrats on continuing the aid. With that said, I do think when Republicans have a stronger hand in Congress, we'll probably see a bit more pressure on, say, accountability for some of that aid or having that aid coupled with, movements towards negotiations or whatnot. So I do see it perhaps shifting the framing, but I don't think the aid itself will change, at least in the short term, which, I know many allies are worried about that, but I think Biden is very committed to that, as are the majority of Americans and the majority of policymakers.
One last question for you, Julie. Trump has vowed to make what he calls, in his own words, a very big announcement next week. Do you think it could be what many people are saying it might be?
I do. We have heard numerous times from Trump over the past few weeks that, he will likely run again. I think he has been hinting towards that. I think we can expect that announcement sooner rather than later. And Helena, he really does still have a very strong grip on the party. It's not as strong as it used to be, but he still polls as the front runner for 2024 for Republicans. And I think he sees it as his advantage to get out early and to really try and use the momentum from the midterms to kind of launch his next campaign. So I do think that is something we will likely expect.
All right, Dr. Julie Norman, co-director of the UCL Centre on US Politics. As ever, great to have your insights. Thanks for being with us.